we have with us three amazing women. Two of them are founders of the Museum of Uncut Funk, Lauren Williamson and Pamela Thomas. And our panel is actually going to be moderated by our very own talented Koibe Koti, the founder and CEO of Bushwick Film Festival. So I'll be dropping all of their bios in our chat. Please do me a favor, and when you have a moment, check their bios. They are dope people, okay? So there we go. Take it away, Koibe.
Oh, you can't hear me. Hi, everyone. My name is Koibe Koti. I am the founder of the Bushwick Film Festival. Thank you so much for joining us. Sumaya, what an awesome job you did programming this weekend. I am so excited to have the founders of the Museum of Uncut Funk. My very great friend Ra introduced me to them, and when I started doing my research about what they were doing and just everything, I was just so amazed. It just felt like hundreds of years of research and content and beautiful people, obviously. So I'm happy to have them here. Pamela, Lorraine, thank you so much for joining us. If you can just tell everybody, maybe give a brief, or give us a little bit about the museum and your mission.
Well, hi, I'm Pamela. We started the Museum of Uncut Funk, I want to say maybe 10, 15 years ago, if not longer. And our mission really is to capture, cultivate, understand, and collect the history of 1970s Black culture. For us, we're 70s children. And it was a very exciting time to be Black in the 70s. And it seems like for the rest of the world, we went from the 60s right into the 80s. And the 70s is the most forgotten and not talked about time in Black history as far as we're concerned. So we decided to take a different twist on collecting artifacts for the decade. And we have an amazing collection. It's a number of exhibitions have been traveling around the US, and we just love it.
Yes, we're a virtual museum, so people can visit us 24/7. We have some of our items in our collection on our website, not all of them, but our collection spans from animation art that was used under the camera to produce the cartoons of the 1970s, featuring the first positive Black characters in animation history during the 70s, to a huge collection of posters from films from the 70s, from every genre of film, from countries all over the world, to comic books that featured the first Black superheroes to appear, which happened in the late 60s and 70s, to coins that have Black images on them. So we have a very unique collection. It kind of comes together to represent beautiful Black images on various types of objects and collectibles. And we're very excited to be here today and to be talking about it.
Can you tell me a little bit about how you guys met, and maybe some like an origin story, like the moment when you were like, let's do this?
Well, we met online. We have known each other for over 20 years. And when I initially met Lorraine, she had a very interesting collection of animation art, the original animated cells used under the camera for Looney Tunes and Warner Brother cartoons. And my first thing was, well, where are the Black cartoons? And I have a background in African-American history, so naturally that would be the first thing I would say. And from there, it just took off like Fat Albert, the Jackson 5. Then we just started looking for different characters from all the cartoons, which led to movie posters, which led to comic books. And it just hasn't stopped for the last, almost 30 years.
Yeah, I think it's been an interesting, journey from kind of collecting the first piece to, building a lot of pieces kind of within a certain area and then discovering something new. Like, we went to a memorabilia show and we saw, coins with Booker T. Washington on them. And neither one of us had ever seen Black people on currency before. And it just started this whole investigation into, wow, what else, is available? And we found out that there are actually a lot of famous Black historical icons that have been honored on commemorative currency, for example. So we have a collection around that that's touring in our For the Love of Money exhibition. So you kind of get that one question, where are the Black cartoons? And it leads you to ask other questions. Well, where are the Black this? Where are the Black that? And you start collecting and building. And before you know it, you've got this huge collection. And it's like, wow, what are we going to do with all of this stuff? And that's really what led to, kind of curating the collections and developing the traveling exhibitions. And, starting to look at branching into other areas like building curriculum around our collections, because a lot of the viewership for our exhibitions and museums is school-age children. So, that has led us to think about, the educational value of our collection, the educational power of the things that we're focusing on. And, it's got us looking at a lot of different things, particularly in these COVID times when we really can't tour our exhibitions because all the museums are closed. So we're, thinking of different ways to kind of keep the educational opportunities, going while we try to work through what everybody else is working through, hoping that, someday we come out of this and we can get back to touring our exhibitions again.
Yeah, so I was always wondering, while I was reviewing your site and information, what is the process of starting a museum? Because for me, like when I think of museum, I don't think of Black women, right? I don't think of like the founders are Black women, and that was one of the things that was so special to me about the Museum of Uncut Funk. And that's something that, like, when I'm in school, when I was growing up, it wasn't like, I never thought of even starting a museum. It wasn't a possibility in my public school system. It wasn't a possibility in the conversations I was having. So what was it like? What is the process of starting a museum? And what is it like being founders as women of color of a museum?
Well, we initially were gallery owners, and having the luxury of being gallery owners, we were still able to collect and come across a lot of art that we would otherwise not have been exposed to or even know about. And unfortunately, when we had our gallery, it was during the time of 9/11. So the town that we were in, a lot of our clientele did not come home. And the town was really affected severely. So we had to take a step back, close the gallery, and then try to work from home. One thing led to another, and so many years later, after recouping from really having to start all over again, we had all of this stuff, all of these artifacts. And in just not wanting, well, Lorene didn't want to have another brick and mortar. We ultimately came up with the idea of starting the Museum of Uncut Funk virtually, because it just seemed like it would have been more cost effective to host our collections online and engage people that way. But one thing has led to another, and so many years later, we do see the possibilities of actually bringing the Museum of Uncut Funk to life. Now, it is a process. It is not an easy process. We have spoken to a couple of municipalities. We're zooming in on one municipality in the state of New Jersey that we hope will find the excitement of the type of museum that we want to bring. We don't obviously want to be like every other museum out there. And clearly our collection is not like every other museum's collection. So we have a different twist on what we would present, but it is not an easy feat, to say the least.
And to really answer that question, I think we're going to find that out. It's one thing to put up your own virtual museum. It's another thing to actually go along the various steps of, trying to build a physical museum. I mean, the first step we've taken is to incorporate ourselves as a nonprofit so that we can start to, fundraise and, start to bring different people in who hopefully will support our vision of what we're trying to do, which is, Pam mentioned, is not to, just simply take our collection and, display it inside of a physical space. What we're hoping to do is really create an experience of the 70s so that you can put the artifacts in context of what it was like to be Black back then. And what we want people to take away, to learn unique aspects of Black history that they probably never heard of before. to make sure that we're balancing the hard history with, some of the wins and then triumphs that we experienced coming out of the civil rights movement, and to really provide a different type of experience, how to experience Black history and how to experience the 70s and experience, all the films and experience the music and the fashion and all the things that made the decade so funky, as we also pay homage to all of the people who made the decade so funky. So we've got a really unique idea, a very unique concept, but we are really going to, in real time, go through the process of figuring out what it's going to mean for us to try to build a physical space.
I keep on muting myself just so I don't go over you, but thank you, that was amazing. And I was just saying that if anybody if you guys haven't seen the website yet, you definitely need to check it out, and you'll see how beautiful, like, through images. And as a Black woman myself, or I think anyone that goes on the site and sees all the images of the 70s of Black people, you see the films, the Blaxploitation, which I'm going to ask you about shortly. It's just like beautiful to see that to be able to go into one place and have it all there. It feels amazing. Speaking of, I could just imagine that collecting everything, you have some very interesting and special stories with the people who the artifacts belong to, or the people that are in the films. Like, could you tell us some of the stories that you've experienced in the process of collecting all this incredible artwork?
Well, we have gone to a lot of different shows and memorabilia events, and really just building relationships with people who are equally as fond of the films and the posters, and to know that we're not alone out there with collectors who are collecting, let's say, Blaxploitation or Black cast movie posters. One of the things that I think led us to really starting to collect not so much the Black films, but everything that we have been collecting, is that there weren't a lot of people that looked like us that were collecting. So it was critically important for us to take the initiative to collect, especially the Blaxploitation movie posters. The one thing that I can say for me personally, we went to a Comic-Con in Philadelphia a couple of years back, and Pam Grier and Richard Roundtree were there. And so in my mind, I'm thinking I'm gonna go to a Comic-Con, I can go see them, tell them I'm big fans, wave, take a picture. And of course there's a process to doing that, one of which is standing online with everyone else who's trying to get that picture, especially with Pam Grier. So, I had that moment with the both of them, and Billy D. Williams. And, Pam Grier, I've always been a fan of since I was about 12 or 13. And to actually stand next to her and take a picture of her, and you got 2 or 3 seconds to do your spiel. And, it was just well worth the many hours we stood online for that experience. We did get to meet Jim Kelly from Black Belt Jones, which was another phenomenal experience. And all of them were very humble and, just very receiving of their fans, and took a minute out, to hear what we had to say. So that was my personal experience.
Yeah, I think, the equivalent of, being with Pam and meeting them was, getting to take a picture with George Clinton, because I'm a big funk baby. And that was, I remember back in the day, all the concerts that I went to, and, seeing the P-Funk shows and the Mothership landing on stage and all that stuff. So that, and, honestly, going to see the Mothership at the new Smithsonian Museum in Washington, D.C. Like, there's a lot of great stuff in there, and I'm a historian. I was fascinated by everything, but that is the thing that I went to the African American Smithsonian Museum to see, was the Mothership. So that's been one of the highlights of my time in trying to reconnect with some of my past.
Wow, those are great stories. Speaking of Blaxploitation, what is your collection like currently? Obviously, we're a film festival, so I was like specifically interested this collection. What was that process like, and what do you plan on doing with the films?
Well, to date, we have almost 700 movie posters in the collection, if not more, both American and international. I am more of a fan of the international movie posters because the art is so different on them. And it's interesting in the process of collecting them, because what Lorene and I have noticed is that in the American movie posters, you'll notice that the posters that were marketed to the Black community are very different from those marketed to the white community, which was a revelation for the both of us.
Wow.
The art on the movie posters is just breathtaking. And that is really what has been the driving force in collecting the art. And especially the posters that come from different parts of the world. It's just been unbelievably phenomenal to see the difference in how we were portrayed, to see white characters be the lead in a Black film, if it was marketed to a specific country or community, and versus that of the Black character. So as far as what we're going, I'm sorry, Lorene, go ahead.
I was going to build on that. I think one of the things that we've learned when you look at both like the animation cells and the movie posters, you're talking about a time before things were, done digitally. So all of it is hand, drawn, hand painted art, which really does, I think, make a difference in the way that the posters look. You can certainly appreciate the artistry that goes behind it. And the way that, Black people were drawn was just, it was very interesting to take a look at how that was done around the world. We've got posters from just about every country. And I think, the other thing that's important to understand is a lot of times they say Black films don't sell overseas. Well, we've got, again, the actual evidence to show that these movies were marketed all over the world, from Egypt and Yugoslavia and Israel and, obviously, Japan and all kinds of different places. So, the thing about collecting artifacts is that you kind of collect the historical evidence, you get to, do the investigation, you get to tell the stories the way that they should be told. And, you get to sometimes expose some of the, the lies and the falsehoods that have been told about, Black history and Black culture. But, everywhere you see the Italian posters, they're gorgeous. It really does show how universal Black culture has always been, particularly in the 70s.
Wow, yeah. I mean, I didn't really think about how we were marketed internationally. And I really wish that I would have collected, or I would have asked you for some posters, because I feel like the audience, we're talking about all this beauty and all this art. It would have been great to show it, but we'll definitely send you guys the link so you can take a look at some of the collection. So my next question is, obviously this year is challenging for so many different reasons. One of the biggest challenge, I shouldn't say the biggest challenge, one of the challenges is Black Lives Matter and the world coming to terms with racism. And I'm just curious to know how that has affected your business and how it's affected you and maybe your drive and your mission.
Well, for me personally, it has made me want to be more Black. Not to say that I wasn't Black initially, and I don't know how much more blackety black I can get, but I am just at a place now because age-wise, this is where I am. And I'm comfortable and I'm happy. And there is no reason for me to be anything other than who I am. Now, it's not my fault, nor is it, quite frankly, my problem that you may have a problem with it, because I don't know what too Black is. I don't know what that means. I've been this way all my life. On occasions, we tend to stuff that part of us and hide it for the sake of the job and, who we engage with and interact with. And I'm just not there anymore. So COVID has made me be at peace with my Blackness, made me be content with being Black. And, you know, as far as the Museum of Uncut Funk is concerned, we've always been Black. And for those who get what we are and what we're doing, they come on board. We haven't had any resistance, even on our website, maybe a couple of messages here or there from, you know, the haters or the non-people of color, but not a lot. So it's been a good experience thus far. I think moving ahead, this is our time. I really believe this is our time collectively. Because as Lorene mentioned to me a couple of weeks ago, we're just in that phase where history is starting to repeat itself again. So this part of the history is the resistance, and we're going to, because we have to come on the other side positively with this resistance.
Yeah, I think one of the things that has become very evident is the damage that has been done by not teaching the truth about our history. There are a lot of people that just don't understand where Black people are coming from because they just don't understand what we've been through. It's very hard to understand systemic racism when you haven't been taught about white supremacy. And I think one of the things that we've got to do is we come through this reckoning, and this is where, you know, we can play a role, but, you know, where Black museums and people who care about Black history and archive Black history and understand, you know, what's happened for the past 400 years in this country can you know, really be utilized as resources, is to help teach people. You know, I'm the child of an educator. You know, I learned my Black history from my mom, you know, and she's the one who really, you know, sparked my interest in understanding who I am and learning more about, you know, where I come from, and, you know, trying to chase my genealogy, as well as understanding, you know, the history and kind of how we got to where we are. And that's, you know, one of the things that's kind of driven, you know, my interest in, you know, what we've been doing, and, you know, kind of keeps me going. And I think we've come to an understanding of how important that is. You know, we really do have to reckon with, you know, our history in this country and deal with the hard history. You know, we focus more on post-civil rights, you know, where everything is first and we're, you know, breaking new ground, but we don't ever forget the blood that was spilled to allow us to get there, right? And I think that's becoming important. It's important for Black children to understand who they are. We were not born slaves. We came to this country and we were enslaved. But we, you know, we had a much, you know, broader and, you know, bigger, you know, impact before we got here. And we have in every aspect of the history of this country made an impact. We've been here the entire time. So, you know, we have an initiative that we've started called Teach the Truth, Tell the Truth, where we really do want there to be more of a national standard in terms of how Black history is taught, driven by people who are experts in it, you know, writing the standards and writing the curriculum and creating new materials. So, you know, we take the, you know, although we are, you know, again, we're Blaxploitation and we're funk and we're, you know, a lot of the fun aspects of the Black experience here, we do take the history piece very seriously because, again, you know, we've been through these times before. You know, we make progress and then there's resistance and there's pushback. And a lot of times that resistance and pushback is violent. So this is nothing new, but it needs to stop. You know, it's time for us to stop this. And I think, you know, one of the things that is, I think, lost about the 70s is it was a time when we were all proud to be Black. I mean, Black was beautiful. We used to say it all the time, Black is beautiful. Say it loud, I'm Black and I'm proud. You know, we were, you know, very in touch with our African roots. We were all trying to find out where we came from. Roots was a huge TV series during that time. So it was a very Black period of time. And, you know, we kind of need to get back to, you know, being proud of who we are, you know, being clear about who we are, and, you know, and really demanding some respect for our history, some respect for our contribution, and, you know, paying homage to the people who got us here, and just making sure that, you know, people don't forget, what we've been through. So it's a very interesting time for people who are, who love Black history, who are connected to it, to, kind of reconcile the past with where we are and make sure that, moving forward, we end up in a better place.
Yeah, that's amazing. And just listening to you speak about culture and history, and a part of that is erasing our culture. A part of us losing our power is losing the knowledge of our history and the knowledge of our art. And I'm from West Africa, and I remember just learning more about my parents and their backgrounds. My mom and her siblings, they grew up in missionary schools, and the missionaries changed their names, so they didn't grow up with their African names, they grew up with their missionary names. And I just always thought that was interesting about part of colonizing, and is erasing your history, and erasing not only your history, your knowledge of your history, but even your desire to want to learn your history. And for me, when Black Lives Matter happened, I felt like it was a process, what I didn't even realize, I didn't even realize how bad. I mean, I knew it was bad, but it was just one of those wake up moments, even for a Black woman, to be like, oh, okay, I didn't think of all the other ways that I was being discriminated against. And so that's why I think it's so amazing what the museum is doing to allow us to study our history and give us a place that we can go and look to and say, okay, this is where I have to go. And the work that you're doing to collect it for all of us is incredible. And I thank you so much. This is not the end. This should just be poured my heart out to you. I'm gonna move it to my next question. Wait, actually, there's some questions. I'll ask these two questions, and then if there's any other questions, you guys can just chat it in the Q&A. The first one I see is the artwork dealt in New York, or can this be open to Chicago poets? This is from Gina. I guess Gina's from Chicago.
Okay, well, I'm sorry, I didn't hear the question. What was it?
The artwork dealt in New York, or collected in New York, or can this be open to Chicago poets?
Okay, well, I mean, our collection travels to various places. I mean, pre-COVID, it traveled to various places. We had a exhibition at the DuSable in Chicago, and clearly would love to get back there, as well as other museums in the area. So once we're able to resume touring our collection, we certainly will be looking to tour it everywhere. But we do have some of our collection online. We're actually going to be building out more things online for people to be able to access, to make sure that we continue again to kind of keep the educational opportunities going while we're in this very interesting time that we're dealing with now. But we definitely do want to get back to touring our exhibitions, and absolutely Chicago is an important city, and we will definitely get back there as soon as we can.
Yeah, I love Chicago. I visited there once for the first time this past December.
That's a great city.
Chicago. And the next question is from Donaldo. He said, can you elaborate more on teach the truth, tell the truth?
Yes, one of the things that, again, as we're trying to figure out what can we do to kind of extend the educational reach of our exhibitions and our collection, I started doing some research. And, I'm not going to, say how old I am. Clearly, I'm a child of the 70s. But again, most of my learning of Black history came from my mom. I get a little bit in school, but not a lot. And I think the thing that was so enraging, candidly, to find out is that hasn't changed. There are not national standards for teaching Black history in this country. It's on a state-by-state basis. Some states do it better than others, but it is not, a situation where you learn Black history throughout your educational years. Maybe you get it in the 7th grade, maybe you start in the 9th grade, but Black history needs to be taught, pre-K through 12. Again, we have 401 years of Black history in this country. It's not that we were just, slaves, and then there was Martin Luther King, right? There's a whole period of time between those two periods, and then hip hop. Those are the 3 things that get covered. You learn about Martin, you learn about Rosa, and maybe, you know, Frederick Douglass or maybe George Washington Carver, but you never learn about the fact that we have fought and died in every war in this country. You know, we continually fight to make things better here. And when we, you know, when we make things better for Black people, it becomes better for everybody. You don't learn about all of the strong Black women and the contributions they've made to this country throughout history. So that needs to be changed. You know, you've got individual teachers who are fighting this battle, teacher by teacher, who are doing the right thing and trying to teach history, but they need to be supported. You know, you've got individual schools who are trying to make differences, but they need to be supported. There needs to be a national effort and a national standard to support the teaching of the truth. So telling the truth about the enslavement of Black people, the truth about white supremacy, the truth about, you know, the violence that has occurred against Black people in this country, you know, to be learning about the Tulsa race riots because you saw it on HBO, that's not the way that's supposed to work, right? So there needs to be a change in how education of Black history is taught in this country. It is important for Black children to be able to see a true assessment of who they really are and the contributions that Black people have made to this country. It can't just be that we were slaves. So, you know, our initiative is, you know, we've got a petition on change to try, change.org, to try to change the way Black history is taught. The textbooks are whitewashing and erasing our history. The textbooks, depending on what, you know, state you live in, they're completely different. They are depicting slavery like it was a, you know, an immigration program or a work study program. They are not telling the truth about what has happened during the time we've been here, and that has to change. You know, we cannot allow people to erase our history, because when you don't think people have any value, it's very easy to shoot them in the street. When you don't think people have made a contribution, it's very easy to continue to discriminate against them and to hate for all of the stereotypical, you know, images and things that you've seen and not really understand the truth about people. And that really has to change. We're never going to get to where we need to be, you know, as this melting pot of a country until we deal with, you know, what has happened in the past and until we set it right. And that's the way to do it. That's a critical way to do it.
And in addition to that, we all need to come to terms with, for those of us who haven't, and understand that in telling this truth, there is a lot of atrocities that have not been discussed, that have not been written about, that even the two of us are not privy to. And we have to be able to be ready to deal with that, talk about it, and teach it in a way where, yeah, you're going to get angry, you may get pissed, but you have to understand what has transpired in this country. You have to understand that, as Lorene said, we were not slaves when we came here. We were doctors, we were scientists, we were lawyers, we were teachers, we were mathematicians, we were all of that. And then they just put us into this system. You know, I'm a preschool teacher. And so it was very important for me, as this program, this campaign came into place, that preschool be added, because as a preschool teacher, you only get 28 days to do very watered down programming for, you know, 3, 4, and 5-year-olds. But in doing that programming with them, they grasp it, they understand it, and then they see images that look like them. And in addition to teaching the history of our experience in this country, the history needs to be taught about the whole experience in the Americas. And then we need to address the fact, you know, that Africa had a civilization that was extremely prosperous before colonization. And, you know, let's just lay it all out on the table. And yes, that does mean that we will become awakened and realize we were never the majority, never the minority, that we were and have always and will be the majority. Now, if that makes a certain group of people frightened as if they're going to lose their power, then, let the chips fall where they may. But at this point, this has to stop. It has to.
Thank you so much, Donato, for that question and for being able to elaborate on that so much more. Sorry, I'm just so moved by hearing you and being a part of a generation that really didn't have access to a place to, unless you were obviously, actively searching for it, as being explained. So speaking of education, there's a question that says, what is your suggestion for the younger generation and how can they educate themselves?
I don't know where to begin on that. I think there needs to be a way. Okay, so let me give you an example. We have we own the rights to a collection of comic strips from the 1950s that appeared in the Pittsburgh Courier. And it deals with the first cowboy, the first Black cowboy, the first Black astronaut, the first Black detective, and Lorene, what is the other one? The first Black
agent.
I'm sorry?
The first Black secret agent, first Black
secret agent. So, you take stories like that and you recreate these stories and you tell of their experiences in the time in which they were. And we're working on a project with one of those characters, with a comic book writer, college professor, John Jennings, to recreate one of the characters where he will be going through different time zones, let's say, and working with different icons or teaming up with different icons in that period of history. And either they will experience what that icon experienced or have a different outcome based on what is going on at that period of time. So that can be one way of how you get younger people to know more about their history, but it also starts at home. It also starts in the classroom. It's up to the educator, in my humble opinion, to take that initiative, which a lot of educators are doing. And you have to find a way to grab the interest of the child. It's one thing to stand before children or young people and say, you've got to da 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 da, but you have to give them the tools. You have to create programming. You have to do more than just let it come out of your mouth into their ears. And, if you're teaching something that is painful and hurtful and not the experience per se, then you're going to lose them. And Lorene, you may have a different opinion on that.
Well, I think that, if you're a young person today and you're really trying to figure out, how do I educate myself, because, the school system is failing me and, helping me understand, Black history in this country. There are a ton of online resources now that are available. You certainly do have the opportunity to, go to various Black museum websites and start to educate yourself that way and learn about their collections and the history that, many of the Black museums hold. Obviously, the African American Museum of Black History and Culture in DC, the Smithsonian Museum, is a great resource. The Schomburg, Center for Black Research and Culture in New York is a great resource. So there are a lot of resources. There are a ton of national historic sites through the National Park Service that are sites of Black history. So there are various ways to start to teach yourself about these things, until the grown folks fix it. And it's unfortunate that that's the case. It's on us to fix it because it's not working. And young people deserve better. They deserve a better education from a Black history perspective than we got when we were kids, mm-hmm. And that is not the case right now. So in the interim, definitely, start to look at things online, different resources online. And, we can even provide, some links and stuff at some point for students. We're going to start to build more of that on our website and be more of a resource in that perspective as well. But there is a lot of stuff that's out there. There are a lot of great, books that can be read, a lot of great websites that can be visited. There are some great documentaries. I mean, PBS does a really good job with, various documentaries around Black history. So that is a definite resource if you check out their website. But, unfortunately right now it is on, every, individual Black person and Black parents to take that on until we can get the education system in this country to do a better job.
Thank you. I think we might be out of time, unfortunately. There is one last question that I asked now. What future exhibition topics are you exploring?
Well, we definitely want to get back to touring our animation exhibition, Funky Turns 50 Black Character Revolution, which, highlights the 50th anniversaries of all the cartoons that were the first in the 1970s to portray Black characters in a positive way, because prior to that we were mammies and coons and animals and all kinds of crazy things until you got characters like Fat Albert and the Jackson 5 and the Harlem Globetrotters and positive female representations with Lieutenant Uhura and Star Trek and Valerie and Josie and the Pussycats. So that exhibition will continue to tour. Our For the Love of Money, Blacks on U.S. Currency exhibition, which is all the Black people on commemorative currency, will start to retour. We are definitely going to put together something on all of our Blaxploitation posters, which will be a large exhibit that will tour. We are touring our vintage comic characters, which Pamela mentioned, which were the first in their respective areas, like the first Black Cowboy, the Chisholm Kid. That's been touring all over the country, which has been a very great exhibition. So we're working on really taking every aspect of our collection and curating into an exhibition. Well, we're also going to be working on building a permanent home for those exhibitions in our own Museum of Uncut Funk. So
that's amazing. I can't wait to come to the opening.
Yes, we're excited.
I am officially inviting myself.
And you will be on the guest list, absolutely.
There's Gina. Is there a way that we can? What's the best way to get involved or contact you guys? Should I just direct people to the website or?
Yeah, you can contact us through the website. Absolutely.
Okay, awesome.
But we're on Twitter, we're on Facebook, we're just on Instagram. So, we are definitely available from, social media perspective, but if you want to, contact us, just, there's a button on our website, contact the curator, and those emails come directly to us. So
what are some Blaxploitation films that you recommend we watch?
Oh, my favorite is Cleopatra Jones at the top of the list, because she was very revolutionary for that time as a Black woman, having that lead role. After that is Shaft, Coffee, Foxy Brown, and but those are my top.
But Blaxploitation is kind of a brush that all the films get painted with. There were over 200 films made during the 70s, Black films. So in every genre. So there are Westerns, there are horror films, and we're just actually working on a project now with the resurgence of Black horror, looking at the horror films of the 70s. There were comedies like, Car Wash is like one of my favorite movies. Sparkle. I mean, there were musicals. There's every type of film that you see today was made during the 70s. And you can, reach out to anybody born during that time, and they'll give you a list of their favorites. But there's just a lot of things that you can go back and take a look at. And some of it's good, some of it's great, some of it's not so great. But I think it is a kind of a misnomer to say that Blaxploitation was just the crime-driven films or the action films. There was there were children's films. There's all kinds of. I mean, Sounder came out in the 70s, which is a great film. So do some research, check into it, because there's going to be a film for everybody in the body of the work that was done at that time.
And I would just like to add before we go that this decade, as it relates to the films, has never been repeated. There has never been a decade where over 200 plus films have been made with a predominantly Black cast. And yes, behind the scenes, there were Black directors and writers and so forth, maybe not in the great numbers that we have today, but that has never been replicated. So that's one of the things that makes that decade so special, at least to us.
Wow. I think post festival, I might have like a Blaxploitation like movie marathon. Thank you so much. I'm so grateful to you for connecting us and for bringing you to this panel and bringing this conversation to the festival this year. It's such an important conversation to have and to learn from you. And I really appreciate everything you're doing. And I cannot wait for the museum to open.
Well, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.